Hi everyone. Today we're going to go through our third and final set of exponent rules, and we're going to be talking about exponents that are zero or negative exponents and kind of generalizing the rules for those situations. So first we're going to look at powers that have an exponent of zero. And for the first couple, we're going to use our calculator to kind of see what's going on here. So for the first one, now if you're not sure on how to do exponents, if I want to type in 5 to the 0, I'm going to type in 5 down here, and then I'm going to use this, we call it the caret key. It looks like kind of an up arrow. I'm going to click that, and you'll see that'll kind of give me a space for my exponent. So if I type in 0, I'm going to get 1. Let's see, if I do the same thing with 35, so I have 35 to the 0 power, I still get 1. And now let's see with this one. I have 3 times 6, and I'm going to enter it just like it says here, so my 6 is in parentheses, and that 6 is to the 0 power. And so here we get an answer of 3. So here's where I have to kind of figure out what's going on. So for my first two, when I had something to the 0 power, that gave me 1. So it looks like any base to the 0 power is going to give me 1. So then we have to think about how come we got 3 here. And so here's where we have to be really careful with our parentheses. So if I rewrite this again, what's happening here is that exponent of 0 only goes with the 6. So essentially what I have is 3 times 6 to the 0 power, but what we learned here is if I take a base to the 0 power, I just get 1. And then 3 times 1 is what's giving me 3. So now, if I generalize what we learned, a base to the 0 power gives me 1. Then in this scenario, my base is just 3x. I'm still raising it to the 0 power, so that's going to give me a value of 1. So our pattern that we're noticing is that raising any base, so in other words, my base could be a number, as in 5 here, or I could have a variable expression. I have 3x. But regardless, raising any base to an exponent of 0 equals 1. So any base raised to the power of 0 is going to give me 1. And so for our general rule, we express it this way. X, which could stand for any base, to the power of 0 is giving me 1. So now we need to look at negative exponents. And here we're going to use our calculator again. So if I type in 2, again I'm going to use that caret key here. So 2 raised to the negative 1 power gives me 0.5. Now we're going to look at this as a fraction so we can better see what's going on. So if you type the math key, you'll see it shows an arrow to a fraction. That means it's going to take that decimal and turn it to a fraction. So it's going to take your answer, turn it to a fraction. So if I hit that key, I get 1/2. So that's telling me that 2 to the negative 1 power is 1/2. Let's see about 2 to the exponent of negative 2. So again, I'm going to use my math key here, turn that into a fraction, so I'm going to hit enter, and I get a fraction of 1/4. And then this one, the third one, I can also do with my calculator. Now, I have to use a fraction here because I noticed my power is on the bottom. So again, to do that, we do our green alpha key, y equals, and hit enter. So now I've got 1 over 2 to the negative 2. And that just gives me a value of 4. So here's what's happening. If I took my 2 to the negative 1, we can think of that being over 1, right? We know we can make any number a fraction by putting it over 1. So when I have a negative exponent, what's happening is if I move this power to the denominator of my fraction, that exponent is going to turn it into a positive. Now, if I move this down, I only have a 1 on top, but by moving this down, my exponent turns into a positive 1. So what used to be negative, by moving it down, it turns into a negative 1. And now I know that 2 to the first power is just 2, which is how we got 1/2. So if we think about it the same way for my second one, we had 2 to the negative 2. We can make that a fraction by putting that over 1. Again, if I take this power and move it down, my exponent is going to become positive. When I move that down, I'm left with 1 on top. My power is going to have a base of 2, but my exponent is going to become positive when I move it. And if I simplify that, 2 squared is 2 times 2, which is 4. Now, here is a little bit different. Here we had 1 over 2 to the negative 2. So that was already written as a fraction. Well, this rule works both ways. If I take this power and move it up, my exponent is still going to turn positive. So when I move that up, I have 2 to the positive 2, and I get 4. So if I generalize this, I can make this, I know I have a fraction really, x to the negative third over 1. So by moving that down, I can make it positive, so it's equal to 1 over x cubed. So here's the pattern. If your your exponent, is negative, then I'm going to say we're going to drop it to the denominator of a fraction to make it positive. And on the other hand, if your exponent is negative, and already in the denominator, oops, I realize you can't see this, so I'm going to scooch it up. And already in the denominator, I'm going to say move it up to make it positive. So you may want to pause it there for a little bit to get that wording in there. But in general, here's what it comes down to. For our rule, if we have x, so any base to the negative power, that's the same as 1 over x to the positive n. On the other hand, if we have 1 over x to the negative n, that's the same as x to the positive n. So this might be one of the trickier rules. But the reason we have this is because lots of times when we simplify an expression, we want to have all positive exponents, and this is going to help us get there. All right, so let's look at a few examples. Okay, so we're going to use these rules with zero exponents or negative exponents. So for my first one, here, this is really nice. My whole base is xyz to the 0 power. I know that any base to the 0 power is just going to give me a value of 1. Because any base, regardless of what it looks like, will give me an answer of 1. Now, we could have looked at this a different way. We could have said, well, I have x, y, z to the power of 0. And I know that since I don't see it, all of these exponents are equal to 1. So if we use our idea of distributing the exponent, I would multiply each of these exponents by 0, which would give us x to the 0, because 1 times 0 is 0, y to the 0 times z to the 0. Now we know that any base to the 0 power is 1, so I would have 1 times 1 times 1, which is equal to 1. So again, however way your brain sees it is fine, but we just need to know the final answer would give us a value of 1. All right, we'll skip 2 for now. We'll talk about that in class. And let's look at number 3. So for this one, now we have 3x to the negative 2. So we said we know we have a negative exponent here. So what I can do, I'm going to rewrite this as 3x to the negative 2 over 1. So we said we know we can take this exponent and move it positive by moving it down. Now the important thing to realize is that negative exponent only goes with the x. So the 3 is going to stay right where it is, and we're going to move this down. When I do that, my 3 stays on top. When this comes down, my exponent becomes positive, so I get 3 over x squared. And that would be our simplified answer using the rules. All right, so we'll take a look at those other couple examples when we're back in class, but hopefully at this point you're feeling pretty comfortable with these rules. Going forward then, we're going to be practicing kind of putting all our rules together. All right, make sure you've got good detailed notes. If you need to, go back and rewind something, or rewind and get those notes, and I'll see you back in class.